Table's over. A guy kept looking at me. I didn't recognize this gent. He stood up. This guy walked over to my table. He pointed at me and he said, "You're Captain Plumb." I said, "Yes, sir. I'm Captain Plumb." "You're that guy," he said. You flew jet fighters in Vietnam. You're a fighter pilot. Part of that Top Gun outfit, you were shot down off the aircraft carrier Kitty Hawk. You parachuted into enemy hands. You spent 6 years as a prisoner of war." Somewhat dumbfounded, I looked up at this guy and I said, "How in the world did you know all that?" He chuckled and he smiled and he said, "Because I packed your parachute." Tell you this, for this guy that runs around the world making speeches, suddenly I was speechless. The best I could do was stagger to my feet, reach out a very grateful hand of thanks. He came up with just the proper words. The guy grabbed my hand, he pumped my arm, and he said, "I guess it worked." I said, "Indeed it did, my friend. And I must tell you, I've said a lot of prayers of thanks for your nimble fingers, but I didn't realize I'd ever have the opportunity of expressing my gratitude in person." He said, "Were all the panels there?" I said, "I must be honest with you. I appreciate your concern, but the answer is no, they weren't. Of the 18 panels I was supposed to have in that parachute, I had only 15 good ones. 3 of the panels were torn. But it wasn't your fault, it was mine. I ejected from that F-4 Phantom jet at 600 knots close to the ground. I was well outside the envelope of that parachute. You did your job, I didn't do mine." I said, but let me ask you a question. Do you keep track of all the parachutes you pack? Do you know of all the lives you've saved? Guy said, "No." Now, this is the most important part of the conversation that night. Maybe the most important thing I say this morning. I think it deals directly with why we're here. I think it deals directly with the inspiration and the innovation and the reinvention of ourselves and our companies that we've been talking about for the last few days. Here's what he said. He said, "No, I don't keep track of all the parachutes I pack. It's enough gratification for me just to know that I've served." Here's a sailor, well below the waterline of this aircraft carrier. He stands at a long wooden table and he weaves the shrouds and he folds the silks of these parachutes and he passes them along one after another, just doing his job. While jet jockey, the guy out there on the front line, I couldn't have cared less about the guy down there in the hole. Until one day, he packed mine up for me. Do you see the metaphor I'm trying to draw here? I think in order to get our front-line people to focus, in order for them to carry out these policies, in fact, and we have all the technology and we have all of the training programs, and we have to be the parachute packers. You and I have to serve the front-line fighter. So the question becomes, how's your parachute packing coming along? Who is it that looks to you for that kind of strength? And just as importantly, how's your parachute packed? Do you have what it takes to meet the challenges of the future?